welcome to Glen First Cemetery. Number 9, top best cemeteries in the world to visit by National Geographic. This is a 30-acre cemetery and there are 20,000 residents, 20,000 burials in these 30 acres. We'll stop at 5 residents along the way, 5 different people who live here. It has people from all walks of life. There are politicians, diplomats, prostitutes, murderers, victims, all buried amongst each other. Sometimes, in one case, a victim and a murderer were buried next to each other. The cemetery has been here since the 1840s, and 1846 was the first burial.
You wouldn't know where the Sacred Harp Singers are.
This is a metal coffin, and it's rumored that bootleggers used to hide their booze in there, but we're not sure. That actually unscrews right off.
We all look forward to this night so much when we can get out and stretch it. My name is Edgar Pittman, and the Pittman family's history goes back in Oregon quite a ways. My Aunt Anna, was married to Jason Lee, the founder of Willamette University. And when they had their child, it was the first non-native person born in the Oregon Territory. Unfortunately, Aunt Anna died in childbirth, so she got the dubious honor of being the first non-native buried in Oregon soil. I and my wife lived here in Portland. We had 3 beautiful daughters. I worked my way up to be general manager of the Portland Cordage Company. We made the big ropes for the ships. Looking ahead to retirement and maybe a little extra income, I went in with some other fellows on a land deal up in Washington, out on the White Salmon River. It's beautiful up there. My wife and my 2 youngest daughters are living there now for my wife's health. But in a couple of years, there were all these stories in the newspaper about land swindles and fraud, shady deals, and I got really concerned about the title to my property. Of course, I couldn't do anything about it here in Portland. So I took a boat over to Vancouver to the territorial government to try to get my title verified. Of course, the first person I talked to didn't know what I was talking about, sent me to someone else who said it wasn't their job. The next person wasn't at their desk. And after hours of talking to every person at the territorial government, no one could help me, no one could verify it, nobody could give me validation at all. I took the boat back to Portland. When I got off on the dock, I walked for a while and then just threw down my hat, said, well, here goes nothing, and jumped in the river and drowned. So here I am buried with my father and next to my wife, who lived until 1939. But the saddest death in the Pittman family is that of our oldest daughter, Etta. And she'll tell you her tale right down to it.
Comment allez-vous? Oh, precious, s'il vous plaît. Bonne nuit. Qu'est-ce que? You don't speak French? Oh good, neither do I. My name's Emma Merlotin. I'm really a good American girl, but things didn't go so well for me.
You see, my parents died when I was young, and there was no money. What else could I do to keep a roof over my head but to become, like thousands of American women, a lady of the night? I wasn't very good at first. I couldn't always pay my rent, but then I found a cheap cottage on 3rd and Yamhill Street, near all the cocaine houses. And then I realized that I could make more money if I developed a specialty. So I became Terry Lacoste of Brest, France. French, of course, being code for a certain technique. And then I started to rake in the cash. I'd never seen this much money before in my life, and it just kept coming in. That winter, I was so excited. I told all my neighbors that I was going to give the best Christmas presents ever to friends and charities and beggars all over town. But on December 22nd, 1885, I learned the dangers of talking too much about money. That night I was about to take tea with my friend Amelia, but when I answered the knock at the door, it was a man from one of the cocaine houses instead. He carried a hatchet, which I thought was odd, but he engaged my services and was very pleased with them. Indeed, I only had time to take off my dress. And afterwards, he paid me handsomely. But when I turned around to put the money in my secret money jar, my friend Amelia heard my scream and sent a boy to find the police. When they arrived, I was lying dead of 12 hatchet wounds in a pool of blood nearly 3 feet across. There was no money in my house and no sign of the man who had killed me. They cut open one of my eyes, thinking that they could see the last image that I had seen burned on the back of them. But I hadn't even been looking at him. And later, a sailor broke into my house and was arrested. When they searched his room, they found a bloody shirt and a bloody hatchet. But he insisted that he had only used them on chickens. There was nothing they could do but to bury me here on Christmas Eve as an unsolved mystery. So I beg you, for your own sake, talk about your services, talk about your family, talk about your dreams, but don't talk about money. Money will get you killed.
Those are husband and wife. We don't know why they were buried so far away from each other. Maybe they didn't like each other. They used to have really beautiful fencing, iron fencing around them. Over time, metal thieves came and removed those. And so that's since fallen. Hopefully it'll be restored at some point. But an interesting sort of separation between those two. On the right over here is the Maclay Mausoleum. Maclay made his money in salmon and timber trading. He actually started the Scottish Highland Games. He was from Scotland. So that's a mausoleum that's built in the same style that you would find in Scotland from Rockland. Obviously had a fair amount of money from his trade.
I'm Deputy Bob Phillips of the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, and I was the very first deputy shot and killed in the line of fire. The day before I died, I'd gone out duck hunting with a fellow deputy. As it got a little late there on the Columbia Slough, I saw a duck flying out of the corner of my eye. I took him down, and upon inspecting my kill, said to my buddy Rex, I hope when it's my time to go, I go that quick, and I go that easy. Little did I know I would go the very next day, as I was called to the Spreadborough's residence on North Mississippi Avenue. Mrs. Spreadborough's brother had escaped from the Oregon Insane Asylum, where he had been committed for stealing horses. Upon entering their drawing room, Mrs. Spreadborough introduced me with the words, "This gentleman." I heard no more as 2 shots rang out, one hitting me just above this button. I crashed to the floor. Her brother, Mr. Hayes, fired 4 times more and escaped in the fog of the smoke from his pistol. My partner had no clue how to find him and immediately called to get me help. 24½ hours later at Good Samaritan Hospital, I deeded my home on Union Avenue to my mother and told her I was ready for the next great adventure. About the very moment I drew my last, Lewis Hayes drew his. 30 brother officers from the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office and from the Portland Police Department, both agencies of which I worked, cornered him in a basement and fired 65 times. Mrs. Spreadborough didn't seem to mind, for an officer had been killed in her home, and her husband's ring finger had been shot off in the process. In fact, I remember her saying, she wished her brother would die, and sure enough, he did. If she'd ever come back to Lone Fir, remember I'm buried here with the rest of my family. And if you're ever dancing at Mississippi Street Studios, remember, a house once stood there. That's where I died.
I married at 17, against my mother's wishes. My husband, Alfred Lester Belding, was a gambler. He liked his whiskey. And I was a fool for the charms of an older man. When my husband had one too many, he would let his fists fly, more often than not in my direction. Our son Eddie was born the year we were married. I didn't want my boy to grow up fatherless, but after 7 years of abuse, staying was no longer an option. So we moved in with my mother.
I am Maud's mother, Mrs. Deborah Lemuel McCloskey. Now, I am not one to meddle, but I did strongly suggest that my daughter marry Emmer Stevens' boy, J.B., but she wouldn't listen. And now here we are, side by side for all of eternity. And I suppose that is punishment enough for any girl. When she came to live with my husband, Lemuel, and I, she met a man. His name was Mr. Frank Woodward, and he was a boarder in our home. Well, he took an instant liking to Maud, of course, and I thought to myself, at last, she will have a chance of domestic bliss.
Oh, but my husband, not surprisingly, was a jealous man. When he heard of my keeping company with Mr. Woodward, he grew insane with rage. It was July 11th in the evening, 1902, when Alfred Belding came up to the door, demanding to see his son. I could tell by the look in his eyes that he was not to change his mind, and so I fetched my boy. Alfred said a few words to Eddie, kissed him, and then sent him back into the house. And then he pulled out 2 pistols and shot Frank Woodward dead. Next, he turned his guns on me.
Well, I was in the parlor, mending one of Lemuel's best Sunday shirts when I heard the shot. I looked over and I saw Mr. Woodward fall, and then Belding shot my daughter dead square in the neck. She died in a pool of her own blood. Lemuel came from the next room brandishing his pistol, just in time to see Belding kill me in this very chair. He put 3 bullets in my husband and then turned and leisurely walked out the front door.
My husband then sat on the front porch steps, relishing his night's work. Eddie was terrified and ran from the house seeking shelter behind a tree. His father shot at him as he ran. What kind of a man shoots at his own son? Alfred then walked across the street to the Lake Charles Saloon, where he sat at the bar bragging about his murderous deeds before giving himself up to police. They hung him several months later. He was the last man to die in the Multnomah County Jail. A dubious distinction, don't you think? He's buried at the Mount Calvary Cemetery in an unmarked grave.
Now, I'm not one to say I told you so, but I am glad that man is in the ground. I have always considered myself a lady of the utmost proper manners, but I can assure you, if I knew where he was buried, I would most certainly spit on his grave. Thank you.